1 Chronicles 13:5 through the end of the chapter. So David gathered all Israel together, from Shinar of Egypt even to the entering of Hamath, bringing the ark of God to Jeram. At one point, the Philistines had the ark, and they put it in their temple, and their god Dagon fell to it, and they reset him. He fell to it. They ended up giving it back. I don't think they actually lost the ark after that. They may have after Saul died, but they got the ark here now. And at this point in time, they got the tabernacle, which is a tent. They don't got the temple built yet. But since they're in a time of war, the ark ain't set up usually in the tabernacle. It's set up in a place where they can grab it and carry it before them in battle. So it's constantly being moved from place to place. So it will be stored in a place not of worship, but in a place towards the battle to show that God's leading them into battle. So this is why it's in this place. And David went up in all of Israel to Baal-Allah, that is that one place, which belonged to Judah, to bring up from there the ark of God, the Lord, that dwells between the cherubims, whose name is on it. So this is showing how sacred the ark is. There was regulations for the ark, and that Levites were only supposed to handle it. And if you weren't a Levite, actually I think only priests were allowed to handle it. So it went beyond just being a Levite. And they weren't allowed to actually touch it. They had carrying poles. And that's very important to this story right here. There was a certain way of respect that it was supposed to be handled. They carried the ark of God in a new cart out of the house of Amminadab and Uzzah and Ahi, and drove the cart. So I don't know if I reckon the cart don't really matter as long as they don't touch it, because it don't really specify. I don't think there's a certain way you're supposed to carry it, and if the handles start wearing out, they probably replaced it. What probably happened here, because this ark now, it was built by Moses, so the handles weren't made out of gold. They were probably made out of wood, so they were probably getting a little rough. And David and all of Israel played before God with all their might, and with singing, and with harps, and with psalters, and with tambourines, and with cymbals, and with trumpets. So they're worshiping. They're having a church service here. They're playing music and singing praises to God. And it doesn't mention nothing of them coming off of war or doing it for any reason here. They're just doing it because the Lord is the Lord, and they want to give Him praise. Too many times there's certain people wait for a reason to give God thanks. But those that are most devout and most faithful don't need a reason, because they've already had many. And I think David was that type of man. He didn't need to have a reason to go have a celebration for the Lord. The Lord's worth celebrating any day. And when they came to the threshing floor of Chidon, Ahaz put forth his hand to hold the ark, from the oxen stumble. So he reached out and touched the ark. This was forbidden. And the anger of the Lord kindled against Ahaz, and he smote him, because he put his hand to the ark, and there he died before God. So God makes an example. He shows us justice. It ain't really wrath pouring out. It can be, but God's also just. He's merciful, but He's just. And this man lost his life because he disobeyed the words of the Lord. Now, it doesn't say he lost his faith, this guy could be very well in heaven, but this is the cause, the reason he died. And David was displeased because the Lord had made a breach upon Ahaz. Wherefore the place is called Para-Ahaz on this day. So we ain't always going to be happy with the decisions the Lord makes. And then sometimes it's going to be tough. But we got to understand that the Lord knows what He's doing. And even if we don't like it, He has the power to do that because He's the Lord. We may not see no good from what happened there, but He's the Lord. He has the right to do it. And that's pretty much what He goes telling Job. Who are you? We should realize that the Lord's plan's much greater than ours. And the Lord's plan goes from generation to generation. It don't just stop and like what we see. Our plans usually don't pass us or go before us. But God's plan is for everything and everyone at all times. Okay. And David, verse 12. And David was afraid of God that day, saying, how shall I bring the ark of God home to me? This right here is good, in a way. David's kind of scared, which he grows out of that. And it's good to have a respect for what God can do, but not really be afraid. But because of David's fear, he starts thinking, and that's where the idea of building a temple for the ark really comes from, out of that. Because soon later, David wants to build a temple. Because he looks at his stuff, and out of this, for the Lord, he wants to build it. Sometimes out of a fear for the Lord, people can come to faith. So a fear necessarily ain't bad, as long as we accept Him for who He is, the Lord, and not reject it. It can also be a bad thing. With David here, it wasn't really bad. You also can fear the Lord so much that you run from Him because you're scared instead of coming to Him. But we as believers have nothing to fear from the Lord because we're His. So David brought not the ark home to himself, to the city of David, but carried it aside into the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. So, this also shows that David ain't in charge of the Lord. Because putting the ark in there would have been like, well, it's kind of... The Israelites wouldn't have looked at it that way. But outside the Philistines and all of it may have looked at the ark being in David's house and feared David. But with it being somewhere else, they were more prone to fear the Lord that David served. And the ark of God remained with the family of Obed-Edom in his house 3 months. And the Lord blessed the house of Obed-Edom, all that he had. So, because Obed-Edom has the ark in his house, he is receiving blessings. This shows that when we got the Lord with us, we're blessed. Now, this doesn't mean that Obed-Edom didn't have troubles. He very well could have. But because it's like we have the Lord, He'll see us through them troubles.